Hello everyone, welcome back. In our previous session, we have connected to MySQL database and then we have seen how can we retrieve the data or how can we read the data in a given table using the select query and display the results to the Talend Studio console. Alright, so let's go ahead and perform another operations using the same MySQL Workbench database and the same table, and let's see how can we read or how can we write the data to the particular table that we are working upon. Alright, let's go ahead. So we have seen that we have established a connection using TDB connection, that is TMySQL connect, and then we have passed the connection properties like the host name and the port number and the username and password, and then we have established a connection. We have used the same connection and we have tried to run the query, and then we have used the tlog row to retrieve the results to the console. Okay, today now let's go ahead and see how can we write the data the same table. Okay, let me take the component. For this, I'm using tmysql output, and this component, the purpose of this component is to insert or update lines into a MySQL table. Go ahead and select this, and as you see, this is a TDB output. As we have seen in our previous session, this is a common connection that it is there for all databases, and you can customize it according to your database. Since I have taken this as tmysql, it is by default mapped to MySQL. In case you give this as t-oracle output, this by default will be mapped to Oracle. But if you see, the type of the component is still TDB output, and this is for Oracle, and this is TDB output, and this is for MySQL. These are nothing but the common components that we have discussed in our previous session. Okay, I think this is clear. Now, let's go ahead and use this component and write the data or insert a few records to the table in the MySQL database. All right. I would introduce another concept here. This is called, now that we are doing a testing on the job, we want to use the same job for different purpose also. See here, I have given this MySQL connection, and I said that once this connection is successfully established, go ahead and run this query and get the results to the console. Okay, now I want to deactivate this two components. That is nothing but the input component and the tlog row component. And I still want to have the MySQL connection available. And once the connection is established, I want to go ahead and run the other components that I am about to design here. So how can I deactivate just this part of the job so that these components would not execute as part of your job run? How can we do that? It is simple. Just go ahead, click on the component, and again right click. You would see an option called deactivate TDB input 1. Click this. It's deactivated. That means if I run this job, only this, and this would be executed. However, you would still get errors because there are no input parameters that is there for tlog row, and we are yet to define other properties for TDB output. So that's a different thing. Like, we understand that this job would error out, but the point here to understand is this component would not be executed as part of the job run because we deactivated this component. Let me go ahead and deactivate this also. Actually, when you're deactivating this, okay, let me bring this back. When you are deactivating this, you see two options. Deactivate just this component, that is TDB input 1, or deactivate the current sub job. So this would deactivate this component and this component. Okay, I'll explain how a job is considered as a sub job in our upcoming sessions in detail. But for now, remember, deactivate a current sub job would mean all the components that are connected using any of these connectors like the row, or on component, okay, or row, filter, or whatever, when there is a logical connection established from two different components or many components that are there, all those linked components would come under one subjob. Just remember it that way. We would further go ahead and see in detail about a subjob in our upcoming sessions. So now that I have deactivated both these two components, these would not run. Let me go ahead and delete this link from the connection and this part. Let me just put this aside so that it wouldn't interrupt our design for the output. And now it's the same story again. In case you want to pass all of this without a connection component, you can always do that. However, in order to avoid a duplication of work, we would go ahead and create an explicit connection and use that. Let's come back to this component and select this MySQL connection and pass the table name. What is our table name? We know the table name as emp_tab. Make sure the table name is always in the quotes. I think a common mistake that we can do is when we want to do a copy paste of the table name, we would copy the table name from the workbench, from be it a MySQL workbench or any other SQL Server Studio or Oracle Exadata tool or Aqua Studio, whatever the tool that you're using to connect to a database from there, and you would simply go ahead and do a Control V, which will not have the table name in the quotes. That's a common mistake always we can do. So please make sure that whatever the value that you're passing should always be in quotes in Talend. Here we have action on table. What does this do? We have options like drop and create table, create if it does not exist, drop table, clear table, truncate table. Okay, all we want to do is we have the table already and we just want to append the data to that table. So I would leave it default. So now go ahead and see what is the options that are available. Action on data. All this update or insert and multiple options that we have according to our use case. We will see all of this, but for now, let's go ahead and do insert. And we want to give the schema for the, so go ahead and pass the schema. So what's a schema? We have two rows, schema of the table, employee ID, and then we have employee name. Employee ID is our integer and this a string, so we're leaving it as is, and this is 10 and this is 50. All right. So now we have the MySQL, or what do we have? We have the MySQL output write component ready. But here you see you want to write or you want to insert data into a table. So how do we get that data? So we can get the data using a tinput file, delimited, or reading any other CSV file, or in fact a select from one of the table and then write it to a different table.